Hello and welcome to the Six Star Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Aveline Clark, and you're about to listen to another incredible episode with an amazing human all about how they are making a difference in the world using their passion, their purpose, and the alignment of their genius. Because I believe that we make the greatest impact in our life when we combine our passion with our purpose and our genius. That's where the magic happens. This conversation is going to be good because they always are. There's so much to gain from these. They're beautiful, they're inspiring, and I invite you to open up to see the possibilities of what you can do in your life too. Enjoy. My next guest is the really lovely Gareth Everson. Now, the funny thing about Gareth is that I've known of Gareth for so many years. We were in a similar community together, but we never actually crossed paths. And I continually heard about him and he continually heard about me. And it was only years later when we're kind of both not in that community anymore that our paths crossed again. And I had the pleasure of having a call with him. And I thought, wow, why didn't I ever meet him in the beginning? But for whatever reason, it took about 10 years and finally we met properly, and I invited him onto the podcast because he's just got so much experience and knowledge and heart. He's been working with small business owners as an entrepreneur for so many years. He's had a really interesting journey. Something interesting about Gareth, before he was 30, he'd worked in 5 different countries, learnt 4 different languages. But since Zoom and becoming a dad he's got 2 teenagers, now he's only worked in 1 country. So in a nutshell, he's a guru of small business. He coaches them, he helps put in systems and processes and automation, and he's been doing it for about 12 years. He's helped over 380 businesses. He's given me the numbers, including ones that were sold in 8-figure acquisitions. So he's pretty proud of that. He's a devoted dad. He has a fabulous work ethic and perspective on business. And he's recently launched his own business community and online training program called the Solopreneur. So you'll have to check that out. But anyway, without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce to you Gareth Everson. Hello, and Gareth, welcome here to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Don't you love technology? It's late at night for you, early in the morning for me. I'm still getting my words and my, sorted out, but it's great to see you.
Oh, likewise, yeah. I don't know whether I'm a morning person or an evening person these days.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Kids wrecks your schedule, doesn't it?
No, you've got an accent there, and I've just kind of said that it's the opposite side of the world time-wise. So tell us, where are you in the world?
Well, I'm not disguising an Aussie accent, am I? I live in Harrogate in North Yorkshire in the UK.
Lovely. And for people in the east coast of Australia, we have no idea where that is. We just know that it's somewhere over there.
It's in the north. It's in the north of the UK, 200 miles north of London.
Oh, right. So going to the city
between London and Edinburgh.
Right. Okay. Is it country? Is it quite?
It's kind of, yeah, I suppose it is countryside. North Yorkshire's really rural. A lot of farming here, but we're also close to big cities like Leeds and Bradford and a couple of other places. Manchester, not far away. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice.
Oh, good. Lovely. Thank you. And so tell me about the work that you do and who you serve. I'd love to know about that.
Yeah, so I work with small businesses, specifically owner-managed businesses. The smaller, the better, usually. Usually an expert-led, whether that's a service-based business who are paid for using their brain and knowledge and expertise to help somebody, or you sort of B2C businesses who are paid for a skill using their hands. And I've worked with that size of business for the last 12 years, specifically around systems and automation. and helping people turn their online interactions into leads and into clients and into referrals. And I love it. I seem to be, I can't work with any smaller businesses. I work with, when I first started my career, I worked with huge businesses, big corporates. And over time, I realized that wasn't for me. And now I work with the smallest possible businesses and really enjoy it because it feels like the work that you do has more of a connection, right?
I love that. It's interesting, Gareth. I've not had a conversation with someone who has described their ideal client and their client base in the same way as you, as in couldn't get any smaller, like the smallest. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, sort of shy away from that, going, "Oh, they're problematic. They're always looking for the freebie. They're not the best clients to have. So you need to go bigger." What's been your experience? Sorry, I know we're segueing a little bit here, but I just want to touch on this because I think it's really important.
No, it's a really important question, and that characteristic is pretty common among small businesses. But I don't tend to work with completely new startups. I tend to work with businesses that have been around for a couple of years and have started to hit that problem of they've grown in the sense that they've filled their diaries. But they've also filled their diaries with lots of admin and stuff that goes with working with their clients, writing proposals, doing follow-up, making sure that leads aren't falling through the cracks, and just generally stuff that they didn't get into business to do in the first place. And that's fundamentally what I really enjoy helping them do. Usually the business owners that I'm working with have one real thing in common, and that's they have a passion for A, their business, and B, for helping the clients that they help, and they want to do more of that. So if I can help them to put processes and systems in place that allow them to spend more time helping their clients solve the problems that their clients have, then I think that's why I like it so much, that it brings rewards to them because it brings rewards to their clients as well. And also means that they're not sitting at their desk on weekend mornings. They really like that as well. So that personal interaction, that one-to-one interaction that you have with people and getting feedback on something really specific is what drives it for me. I alluded to earlier in my career, I was working with big blue chip companies who the only motive for them was really, or in kind of a corporate entity, was how do we grow the share price? And it just had so much less meaning than the market that I now work in.
Quick question, as we get to know you a bit better, what do you enjoy doing when you're not busy in, connecting with one-on-one with your clients?
Sports, really, whether that's playing, coaching, or watching. I've got two teenage kids, 15 and 17, who are both pretty sporty. I coached my son's football team, even though I'd never played football. I really just enjoyed it. I'm I'm a scorer at my daughter's netball team. I help out there at weekends. She really loves that. I love that sport. I played basketball for 26 years before, shall we say, my body wasn't capable of doing it anymore. And it was after that time that I needed something else to do. And instead of standing on the sidelines, I learned how to coach football. And just at the time that my kids were getting into sort of senior school or secondary school, we call it here. And just taking them through that and just helping out on weekends and just generally doing that kind of thing. So that's what I do outside of work, and trying to keep on that passion for being active, really. We spend so much time at our desks, don't we, that getting outside and enjoying the sunshine or the rain or whatever the weather is at weekends is a real big thing of mine.
Yeah, it's great. So you haven't gone down the path of coaching basketball?
It's funny. No, I haven't. I think I would have done had my kids been a bit more interested in it. No, I really enjoyed playing it. I was introduced to basketball by my uncle at age 14 when I was frustrated with sports myself at that age. And he introduced me to basketball and I just loved it. But both of my kids are into sports that they got into. And it was kind of a natural course for them. And I didn't want to force them or push them into playing the sport that I loved. So, yeah, it is what it is.
That's right. At least they've got their sport. You know, that's a great thing. So
Exactly.
And do they love having Dad on the side and helping out and, you know, being part of it?
That would be a question for them, I think.
Yeah.
I think mostly, yeah. I think were I to be a different type of coach, well, actually, I've never coached my daughter, but were I to be a different type of coach and like the other kids on the sports field not appreciate me as a coach, I think it might have been more difficult for my son to have me as his coach. But I wasn't that kind of person. What I lacked in technical knowledge about football, I made up for in high fives and caring about the people that were on the pitch, right? Yeah, that was kind of my ethos to football coaching. I'll never be a Premier League coach, put it that way, I believe.
Oh, that doesn't matter. The fact is that you're there and you're doing it. And look, my son's football team, the coach is one of the dads, and the first 2 years, I think they didn't win a game.
Bless them.
And they've been together 6 years, and last year they won the championship. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And which of the years did your son enjoy the most?
That's a great question. I haven't asked him. I think the championship was pretty special, obviously.
Yeah.
But,
I bet he'll still have memories from the years that were tougher.
Oh yeah,
I bet he will. The kids that I coached, I don't think we won the league a couple of seasons in the 6 years that I was there. Not like the top league, but we got promoted 2 seasons, and I don't think those were the seasons that the kids will remember with the most fondness. From the ones that I've spoken to, some would, but for the most part, it was those challenges where they had to show resilience, or they had to have that victory that came from out of nowhere. Those are the memories that were really fond to them.
There's so much we can learn from our kids, and certainly from sport. And you must get those insights all the time, like every week, from being with the kids on the sidelines. And you know, what's been a recent sort of moment where you've been coaching the kids and then you've come back into the office, and then, you know, there's a parallel, or there's a learning there?
Oh, so many parallels. Yeah. Even with clients that aren't particularly into sports, running small businesses is really all about making comebacks and being resilient and being determined and showing that commitment to still move forward towards your goal, because at times it's so hard and you suffer so many different setbacks. Your business will have done, mine has, certainly our clients will have faced that. And that comeback victory for them is ever so special. And it's just nice to be there to help them and to coach them out of those difficult times and help them find solutions to where they've faced problems. That's one of the biggest joys about running your own small business that's working with other small business ventures, I think. Just seeing those little victories.
Absolutely. I'd love to learn a bit more about you and the journey you've been on. You mentioned that you worked for big corporates previously. You've obviously been working for small business now. I think you said 12 years, or was it 15 years?
I've been working with small businesses for 12 years, but I've had my own businesses for 17 years. So my career started working with Accenture, the information technology sort of projects, working with big, what we call FTSE 100 companies over here, mainly in the kind of retail and healthcare sectors, big supermarkets. I did a lot of work with, and I was there for 8 years or so, and I loved it. I loved the early part of that that stage of my career. Prior to settling down, getting married, having kids, it was great. That lifestyle of being in London one week, in Germany the next week, in the US the week afterwards, it was fantastic. While I was in my 20s and very early 30s, it was great. But then Jack, our eldest, came along 17 and a half years ago. And within 3 months, I'd handed my notice in because I didn't want to be away from home. And for the first 4 or so years of my self-employed life, I was a member of a franchise organization. I jumped out of corporate and bought into a franchise because it felt like the right path to go in. It was a consulting franchise. And it was great. It was good. It gave me a grounding in how you find your market and how you find your customers and all of that kind of thing. But it felt too constraining to work still within what was in effect a mini corporate structure. And so really then for the last 12 years, I've been working as a consultant, coach, systems person, helping my clients, my own clients, to solve their problems. But that all came about because I left corporate because I didn't want to be away from my young family. And that was the decision I took there. And I can see that story so much in the clients that I work with that are struggling to make their businesses run effectively, but B, especially if they're kind of our age, they're going through that process of having a family, right? And if they're struggling to find time to do the things at weekends with their kids or out the house early because they've got client commitments to do or working late in the evening, it's a real challenge for them. A friend of mine used the phrase of I got to the stage where all I was in the room, but all my family saw of me was the little Apple logo on the back of my laptop. And I just thought, that resonates so much with anybody that kind of is trying to get a business going themselves. All you see is the logo on the back of the laptop, and that's not being present. And so, that's a big motivator for me, helping people to be able to put the laptop away and not look at their phone as much as they're perhaps doing.
And interesting, it's that family was at the core of the decision to leave, and it's still the core of at the core and the heart of what you're doing. And do you find that your clients, like you said, most of your clients also have a similar passion and motivation for being in business?
I find maybe you've seen this as well. I think they have some real common characteristics, small business owners. And this is why I'm so passionate about working with them. One, as I mentioned before, they love what they do and how what they do helps the clients that they serve. Two, they started their business because it would give them more flexibility to spend more time with the people that they loved outside of work. Whether that becomes a reality is kind of an open question, and we'll talk about that as well. But three, they also seem passionate about their communities as well, especially those businesses that serve their local markets. The kind of person and van type businesses. I saw this at sports events and when I was coaching football, or at weekends when I'll go to Lucy's netball matches. The number of times that you will turn up and the coaches who are getting the cones out, the balls out, the kit out, will more often than not have vans with their business name on the side of it, and there'll be plumbers, there'll be builders, they'll be in some way serving their local markets in their business, but also then at weekends, it's kind of this mindset of also wanting to be a part of their communities as well. I think we volunteer more. I don't know if you guys have parkrun in your town, but so many parkrun volunteers here are either self-employed or have their own businesses. And it's just this thing that we want to be those three things. They're for our communities, they're for our families, and they're for our clients, right? And that's one of the things that people don't talk about when they talk about small businesses, and it means a lot to me.
It's beautiful, and I love how you've described it, and you've painted a picture for me. And honestly, it feels really warm and inviting.
It's
and it's
freezing
like
here.
there's a heart space to this. There's an emotional
We've got
connection.
snow coming tomorrow. It's not that warm.
So park runs off, or
very rarely. We'll run through the snow. Sorry, sorry, I interrupted you when you were talking about the warmth.
Oh, that's okay. It's so funny. There's warmth through it all, right? Somehow.
Yeah.
Maybe you've got to run to keep warm. There we go.
Yeah.
But what you said is right. I'm thinking about the people in my town and at the sports fields, and who are the coaches, and who's doing it. And yeah, look, there's some. I'm thinking about my boys' soccer team and who the sponsors are, and they're small local businesses, and that they are the ones that keep showing up. You're right, and yeah. I love that they do that, and they help create and build the communities.
They all do until they don't, and that's the big challenge. If they're struggling in their business, then they're not able to do those. They're not able to contribute to those other two things, their family or to their communities. And so, small business is such a part of building communities, far more so than government or big business ever thinks it is.
Couldn't agree more. And
I got on my government hobby horse then.
That's okay. Everyone would. I'm sure most people are going to agree with you. And it's been my experience that small businesses do make the community, and we know that. We think about where we get our food or our coffee from, and these are small businesses. Our local coffee shop opens at 5:30 in the morning to support the tradies, because there's a lot of tradesmen that live around here, and they're going to work early in the morning, and so they support them by opening at 5:30.
And the tradies do so in return. They'll go and buy their coffee there, right? Yep. There you go.
And that's what it's about. It's about showing up, being supportive of each other. And you made a really good point. They keep doing it until they can't. So if their business isn't working, then they can't support their community or their families. Let's talk about that, because more businesses statistically fail in their first year, 2 years. You've obviously worked with people who are, you said that they've typically been in business for a couple of years, and the goal is to get them away from that position or that danger of losing their business. What are the biggest dangers that they face, or the issues that they face do you see that could be preventable or solved?
In those early few years where they're at most danger of failing, the biggest challenge that, let's call them strivers, they are striving to get to where they need to be. They're striving to find themselves a market and find themselves a name and a level of trust that gets them established, right? The biggest challenge that most of those businesses, especially if they're not of a traditional trade, I don't often work with traditional trades, but when I do, it's a lot easier than when you work with somebody who is using their kind of experience and knowledge to help somebody. The biggest challenge that group faces, the knowledge sector, if you like, is being able to position themselves effectively so that people understand what the difference is that they make and what problems that they solve are, so that they can hire them. And that, if you're a plumber, it's easy to advertise that you're a plumber in Harrogate or in Leeds or wherever you happen to be. People know what a plumber does. People know what a builder does. There are different types of both of those businesses, but it's pretty understood what they are. But if you're a leadership coach who works with female middle managers who have been working for 10 or 15 years and are struggling to rise up the organization because you're not getting the recognition that you should be getting in meetings. That's a lot harder to explain succinctly in a LinkedIn headline or on the top part of your website, right? It's a lot harder to be able to articulate that. And the number of businesses that start up that are using experience that they built up in, say, the corporate world and are leaving that to go and start their own venture, the number of people that struggle to then articulate the difference that they make or the problems that they solve, and how they can help their prospective clients overcome those challenges is really hard for that grouping. That to me is the biggest challenge that any startup business faces. Once they've gone through that, then they face other challenges. How do you manage your time more effectively? How do you make sure that every client experience is as good as every other one? Those are ones that come through growth pains, and it's actually probably all three of those in different ways that I help my clients with. But I would say, to your specific question about how do you break through that business failure challenge in the first 1 or 2 years, when the money runs out that you've saved up to leave corporate with, it's all about positioning, really. That's the biggest challenge, I think. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do. And most people struggle. And without having the smarts and knowing what to do, they'll fall into the clutches of, a cookie cutter marketing agency that just sucks their money out of them and they get nowhere, which you've seen over and over again, as I have.
I think we've got similar backgrounds in that sense.
Yeah. And then they'll unfortunately, fall in, then jump, well, that didn't work, and they sort of bounce around a couple of gurus and a couple of providers and shiny object syndrome later until they kind of throw the towel in.
Yeah, and then you find that, well, before they throw the towel in, if you then discover, or if they then discover you mid journey, say they've worked with 3 or 4 of these gurus, or they've been influenced by various different people along the way, the patchwork of what their online identity looks like is probably even worse than it was in version 1, where they were struggling to sort of get their message across. You look at it and you go, so what do you do and how do you help and what kind of problems do you solve? Because I'm struggling to understand what you're about. It's it is a challenge. The guru market, or they all have their own different ways of positioning or helping their clients to position, don't they?
They certainly do. Was there ever a moment in your journey where you hit one of those walls or a different kind of wall and you just thought, this is too hard?
Yeah. I'm smiling because I want to tell you 2 things about that. That's a really nice question, and I've not been asked it that much. I think, well, until I met Rob Drummond, who we both know, I think I'd registered the most number of domain names or had my business operate under the most number of different business domain names until I met him. I still think I'm pretty close. I've got 3 on the go at the moment for different services. And it's probably in those 12 years close to 7 or 8. And I think Rob's probably upwards of double figures. So that's one thing. When you hit when you're techie and you hit a barrier, you tend to think, how can I solve that with a different domain name or a different identity, right? And I'm techie and I try and solve things that way. That's my creative way of unbundling the nonsense. The second one is probably more serious. 6 years ago, I got so frustrated. Actually, it was probably 6.5, 7 years ago. I started to get really frustrated with the direction of travel that most small business technology was going in, specifically software. It felt to me like there was this whole culture that was building up, this momentum, this culture that was building up and had been building up since probably 2014 through to 2018, 2019. It's still growing, where it's this kind of app culture. There's an app for that, and don't worry, Zapier will link it together, or you'll be able to string it together with different things. And in around late 2016, early 2017, I got so frustrated with that marketplace. I called it the digital spaghetti, that everything was all over the place. If one reference to a contact in one place was completely different to it in another place. Your email would be done in somewhere. Your landing pages would be done somewhere else. Your CRM would do something completely different. And it felt to me, being closer than most of these software companies to end users that were struggling with the complexity, it felt to me like nobody was doing anything about it. So really foolishly, with hindsight, I spent a lot of our savings on starting up a software company, my own one. Didn't have millions behind me like many of these big players do. And I wanted to bring together bookkeeping and accounting, specifically Xero, and provide an interface into that with sales and marketing. So those four things: bookkeeping, accounting, sales, and marketing. And basically have one piece of software that would bring the two things together. Called the business Connectably. The whole launch was great. I won some startup awards, which with hindsight are utterly meaningless when you're in startup mode, because really it's all about just traction and making sales. Then COVID came, 2020, when the business was kind of at that point of, is it going to fly or is it going to die type thing. COVID just completely threw a spanner in the works. I lost a bit of patience with it and enthusiasm for it, and I closed that business in 2022, 2 years ago. So that was kind of the second example of how you sort of how I've overcome an adversity that I faced. That's the biggest business mistake I've ever made. Doing that through never ever start a business through frustration is my learning from that. Because you're going to stay frustrated. And it's never going to be, even if it's a perfect solution for you, it's not going to be a perfect solution for everybody else. And that was my experience with Connectably. That was a six-figure mistake, Aveline.
I'm sorry. Ouch.
It wasn't your fault.
No, I'm sorry for you. That's
Thank you.
6 figures to come up with that learning. But you've got, I'm sure you learnt a lot more through that, and resilience and clarity.
Clarity is the big one. Clarity is the big one. I'm a much better coach to my clients as a result of some of the things that I went through, and a much better operator of a business than I was beforehand, ironically. It took a six-figure dent on the balance sheet to get to that point, but it's made me a better business operator, ironically.
You're not the only person I've heard say that as well, by the way. Yeah. I did have a guest who lost, I think, everything and, made some silly mistakes and said something similar, and now as a business coach, he's able to draw on the experience that he had, and it's made him very clear about who he is, what his purpose is, and where he's going. And I get the sense that that's exactly where you're at too. I feel that you are very much on track. You feel very driven and directional and focused.
On the rebound, coming back off the ropes is probably a better way to describe it.
Coming back off the ropes. So whereabouts are you in that healing journey, Gareth?
It's progress, not perfection. Should we call it that? I feel fully healed, but I don't feel that. I feel like it was a 5-year journey that probably set me back 10 years of where I wanted to be. I got to the end of that journey with the software business, having moved further away from my goal of building a business of value that was a saleable asset that made a big, meaningful difference to a whole bunch of clients/users. I felt like it, although it was 5 years in the making, it probably set me back 10 years from where I could have been. So that's where I am sort of mentally. Time, we can't get back time, and the people that we help can't get back their time that they've wasted on other things. The most important thing is that we correct the course, right? Whenever this kind of thing happens.
When I went through a really tough period going back about 10 years ago, I was in the middle of it. My dad said to me, I know you won't realize this right now, but there'll come a moment in the future where you'll look back and you'll actually be glad that this happened. And I know that sounds crazy because of the situation you're in, but you'll get to that point. And I looked at him and I went, you're crazy, Dad. That's never going to happen. And it took about 6-7 years for me to go, he was right. I now have that hindsight clarity, and I'm actually glad that happened. Yeah?
Yeah.
Have you had that moment yet?
With my dad?
No, with the situation that you're in, with the 5-year.
The clarity? The clarity, yes. I think it came before I closed the business down, actually, ironically. Okay. It probably came 6 to 9 months before I shut the business down fully, switched off the servers. I'd sort of been thinking about how I could. I didn't want to go back into corporate life. I knew I didn't want to do that. Likewise, I knew that I didn't want to persevere down the path that I was going down, where it looked like, to your example, that we were in danger of, facing a lifestyle change, having to sell the house, any of those kind of combination of events. So I knew that I needed to make a plan and change the path before the end came. It couldn't be like we're going to close the business now and then spend 6 months reinventing. I just didn't have that time, didn't have that ability to do it. So for a while, I ran 2 businesses or 2 identities. It's actually still the same business that I run it under now, just with a terrible balance sheet. But I knew that I wanted to go back and do my best work again, which was coaching small business clients who, you mentioned something earlier, actually, and I didn't pick up on it at the time. There's this reputation that small businesses have that they want everything on a freebie, or they want everything done for them, but don't want to invest anything to get there. I don't work with that kind of business. I'll let them find their own course and their own path to me for when they are in a better position to know what they want to do, or roughly where they want to go. Not necessarily what they want to do, but roughly where they want to go, and be serious about making a plan to go and make those changes to how they run their business. Usually when they've had some success, they know how to sell what they're selling, more or less. And they know that they have a stable business that isn't going to go under if they carry on the path that they're on, but they're not going to enjoy it a great deal. That's probably my sort of demographic of how people find me. And then I help them solve that last piece, that to bring enjoyment back into it through helping them to reshape the way that they go about signing clients and running their business and getting referrals and managing their time more effectively. I wanted to bring that up because I hadn't picked up on it at the time, but it's in that context, it's kind of a mirror to how I then almost consulted myself to do the same thing and to recognize where there was a pathway that wasn't going to be successful, that was never going to have the success that I needed it to be. I almost needed to take a step back or look myself in the mirror and say, right, okay, what does the plan look like in order to correct? And my best work has always been around coaching clients. And that's what I went back to doing. Once I was able to step back from developing code and testing code and bug fixing and all of that kind of stuff, I was able to then think about what would a book look like? What would a new online identity look like? And all of that kind of stuff. I haven't written the book yet, but I've got the structure for it. And I became a different person almost. I was going to say almost overnight, but that sounds a little bit glib. But within a month or so, certainly within 5 or 6 weeks, I was able to get my mojo back and be able to rechannel, recalibrate, repoint the sat nav to where I really wanted to go. And yeah, that was my comeback story, if you like. Still going on.
Thank you for that. You answered a few questions I had. How did your family cope during that period? And yeah, how important was their support? And
so at this time, have you faced challenges like that in your own business? The story about your dad, was that a business related thing?
It was actually personal.
Right.
It was pretty tough. Yeah.
Right. In a business challenge like that, you're telling the same theme of the stories, the same outline of the story to everybody. Everybody gets the structure, the different chapters that go into what that story is and where that story is going to go next and all of that kind of stuff. But depending on your audience, you have to tell it in slightly different ways. So what would this be now? 2 years ago. So my youngest was 13, my eldest 15. They're at an age where they don't have a full grasp and a full understanding of like everything in business, but they've grown up in a family where dad runs either one or a couple of businesses at any one time. And so they had a perspective for when things are going great or things are going okay and things weren't going quite so well. And they had a great insight into me launching the software business and where that was going and the excitement of all of that and the momentum and the first users and all of that good stuff. But then they also got the perspective, and it was also because they'd seen what was going on through COVID as well. This wasn't a COVID failure. I must say that it wasn't a COVID failure in the slightest, but at that time, there was a lot more talk on the news and in the media about challenges that businesses were facing in one way or another. So they were aware of things like that anyway. You tell your kids a different version of what you tell your wife or your partner. You tell your wife probably everything. She's never worked in business. She's a teacher and has been throughout her career, so doesn't have the same perspectives as business that I do, but nonetheless, her insights were probably even more valuable as a result. And then you tell, your parents and your in-laws other parts of the story, and you tell your friends and business partners and all of that kind of thing, another different flavor. And so it was actually through having all of those different types of conversations that you then start to put together actually what are the core themes of what worked, what was good, what am I really, really good at, what's my core superpower, and what's my complete kryptonite, and how do I do the least amount of what is my kryptonite, and how do I do the most of what my core skill set is. And thankfully, through all of that, I was never at a point where none of my business activities were not generating money in the slightest. I always had income that was coming in, but for a long time, the outgoings were higher than the income that was coming in. So as soon as I managed to turn off the tap of the cost going out, things were fairly easy to correct, really. But yeah, the stories that we tell different people can help shape the direction that we then go in, right? And
is it the feedback that they give you in the telling of those stories?
Yeah, there were different reactions, but also how we listen to ourselves as well when we give a perspective. Oftentimes, especially when we spend most of our lives at our desks and we're either working with a client one-to-one or in a kind of group setting, or we're in a completely silent room, maybe with the exception of a little bit of music on or the radio, but you can't talk, you can't have an interaction with Spotify or the radio. And so actually having a live one-to-one conversation with somebody where you're not being the coach to somebody because that's your business role, where you're actually canvassing somebody else's views and just explaining something. And especially where they ask you that question that you haven't thought of, but it's like such a simple question. And you just think, damn, why didn't I just think of that way? Or why did I phrase something the way I did for that question to then come? And then it gets you unraveling it and thinking through, actually, if I take one step back, I can take 2 steps forward in that different way. So yeah, the conversations were really helpful in terms of helping me unpick and go again.
Yeah. When we language things and verbalize things and in the different ways, like you explained, we get to see the different parts of ourselves, and we don't make it real until we've actually spoken it out. Like you said, otherwise we're sitting in a room by ourselves and it's just all in our head.
Yeah.
And
or in the written word. I until probably the last couple of years, I've always felt more comfortable just writing down things or writing blogs, writing emails, the written word rather than like verbalizing things, having conversations, actual real life conversations, one-to-one.
You mentioned figuring out your superpower, and it's something I love to ask my guests. So what is your superpower?
I was interacting with somebody online today, and this kind of came up, not in the context of it being a superpower, but it came up in the sense that when we're experts at something, it's very rarely that thing that we are a leading expert in that our clients hire us for, right? And I'll explain. So my thing that my clients get the benefit of my best skills at is in digital systems, technology, CRM, automations, business process automation, all of that kind of stuff, which sounds to anybody really dull as dishwater. What I really help them to do, especially the context of the kind of clients that I work with, is help them to find that clarity, help them to find that confidence, help them to find that tweaking of their positioning, or that resetting of that slight resetting of their course, their direction, the recalibration of the sat nav, I like to call it. That's probably what I do more than anything for my clients. That's my zone of trust, if you like, of why clients end up enjoying working with me. But as I said to somebody today, you can't put that on a LinkedIn profile because that sounds just so wishy-washy and woolly and like all a bit woo-woo for somebody that works in technology. But yeah, that's probably why. That's not why clients hire me unless they've come through referral. But it's what they probably end up experiencing at the end of it if everything's gone to plan. Yeah, in a roundabout way, that's my answer to your question there.
Yeah. It's a great answer, and having that insight, because I think a lot of us, it's similar in that what we sell to the world is not necessarily our genius. It's some packaged process skill, set of an outcome depending on what industry we're in. But our unique genius is inside of that. What we package and sell to the world is different. It's the universally accepted or the norm, or it's how people absorb it or purchase it or absorb it. So yeah, we've been having these conversations in Six Star about this, and we all have a genius, and it's not necessarily something that I think that we are comfortable in sharing or talking about. And it's great that you have that awareness. And I'm going to encourage you, Gareth, in the coming days and weeks. And you said you like writing, so maybe you can start writing more about this all around. Maybe.
The conversation seems to be going that way. The world seems to be telling me to document that more and to clarify that a whole lot more. Yeah. I can't stress enough. What we think we do and how we think we help somebody is probably not the same way as they perceive it or take it or value it, right? And sometimes even when they write you a testimonial, or even give you a referral to somebody else, they don't clarify it in the way that actually has meant the difference to them. Many times they'll put a slant on it because they write or they say what they think will be most helpful to you in terms of the way that you position yourself. It's almost like that. No, everybody's talking in tongues.
Yes.
We're talking in tongues because we can't articulate it ourselves. Yes. And our clients sometimes do because, maybe Gareth wants me to say it this way. And actually, just say it how it is,
Wouldn't that be nice? That's the kind of world I am excited to be in, where more people are just happy to say it as it is, not how they think it should be.
Be able to find that clarity more easily, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe we should both work towards that, doing more of that. Should we make a pinky promise to one another that that's what we work towards?
Let's do it. This is live. This is on air. Pinky promise. There we go.
It's now documented that's what we'll work towards more. We'll hold one another to it, and we'll share experiences of it.
Absolutely. I love that. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
So one thing that I always ask my guests, because this is 6-Star Leaders podcast, is what does being 6-star mean to you?
Yeah, I was thinking about this because I've listened to a number of the podcasts since Rob introduced me to you. 6-star to me is about asking the question that nobody else has asked, that opens the door. That's what the truly outstanding, the truly elite, the really 6-star people are able to do. It's all very well building rapport. It's all very well finding the problems or discovering and trying to uncover what the challenges, what the problems are that your client faces. But the real 6-star coach or leader in that setting will find the way to ask that one question that just completely unlocks the door, breaks down the barriers, builds the trust, helps that client to recognize the pathway that they ought to be going down. That to me is the 6-star differentiator, I think.
Okay, you've said it verbally now, and when this episode goes live, you're going to listen to it again. You're going to write that down. I think it's got to go on the wall, Gareth. And is that going to be something
should I get a new neon sign made behind me?
Pretty much, yeah. Neon sign, yeah. And you wake up every day, you go into the office, and there it will be. This is what I'm doing every day with my clients. I guarantee you don't even need the neon sign. I know that's what you'll do. I can tell.
I try to find the question. Good questions always beat good answers, I think. It shows we've listened.
Yeah, indeed.
That's why it's weird being on the other end of the questions on a podcast like this, but nice as well.
Well,
you were unlocking today rather than opening. You were opening the door, literally.
What brings you the most meaning and joy in your work?
Hearing success stories. Those, when you get those little 1 or 2 line emails of "I did this," and to anybody else in that person's life, it probably doesn't have the same meaning or the same resonance that it does to you and that client, because you've had that personal relationship and you've worked through finding a path out from a problem that they've been facing, helping them overcome that confidence challenge that they had with it, or helping them break through a limiting belief that they perhaps had. When they write to you and just, or leave you a voice memo and say, "Gareth, I managed to do this," that's just the best feeling ever. There's no monetary value associated with that. You can't even share that in a wider setting without giving it a massive explanation. But it's those little 1 or 2 line emails that make all the difference, or the voice note, or it's usually one of those two, because they want to share it so quickly, and it's way before the next call. It's usually that the email or the voice note or something like that that make all the difference. And you just chuckle, because you just think, that's amazing. And the only person that I can share my delight about that with is you, Mr. or Mrs. Client. I can't really tell other clients about it, because there's no real context to it.
That's right.
It's that moment of private joy.
Yeah.
Is how I'd probably describe it.
Yeah. Yep. I understand that very well. We are getting close to the end. I could keep talking to you, Gareth, but I realize it's super late for you as well. And I'm impressed by how alert and articulate and amazing you've been in this conversation. Thank you for sharing tonight. How can people get in touch with you?
Probably the best way, the single easiest way, is to go to askgareth.com, and that will take you straight through to my LinkedIn profile. Everything about me, pretty much in a business sense, is on there. We can connect on there. If you make your intro on there, your note when we connect, just saying that you heard the podcast on 6-star, then that'd be a great way of connecting that way. Beautiful.
Thank you. Is that one of your many domains? Ask Gareth.
It's one of the many domains. Yeah. So it's easier than giving a big on LinkedIn URL, right? AskGareth.com.
I think it's very, very clever. It's great. And it's just so easy to remember. There you go, everyone. AskGareth.com. Gareth,
that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. In closing, I'd love to know from you if you could just share a little tidbit or a piece of advice or something to leave our listeners with.
If you're struggling, seek help. In whatever way. Don't sit at your desk going through struggles. Don't sit at your don't go to client meetings with thoughts on your mind. We talk about mental health so much. It's rarely talked about seriously in a small business setting. But if you're struggling with something, it's always better to share that with somebody else, whether that's your partner, whether it's somebody that you've done some business with in the past, whether it's a networking contact. A problem shared is a problem halved, and it really is. And I think as small business owners, we need to address those challenges more. We're not superheroes. We might think we are. We might think we're world experts at something, but when a challenge hits us, it's always better to speak to somebody, anybody, first of all, and just try and work things through, because more often than not, you might not find the answer, but it'll make you feel a whole lot better just having that conversation with somebody. So it sounds a little bit glib, but yeah, go and speak to somebody if you face a challenge that you don't feel that you've got an immediate pathway to help you solve. And if you can't find that person, then, as Aveline said, askgareth.com. Let's become friends and bounce ideas around.
I guarantee you'll feel better. I feel so much better from this conversation, and thank you for that piece of advice. Hope the listeners have enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you for showing up, being in my space for this time, Gareth. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
You're welcome. I look forward to connecting very soon. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I did in hosting it. So please rate, review, and leave us a comment below. And finally, also, I'd love you to share it with a friend, someone who you think would get something positive from it, someone who would enjoy it. We're here for each other, so please share the love. If you'd like to reach out and talk to me and learn about how you can make a bigger difference in the world by serving the ideal clients that you have with purpose, please get in contact over at journeypoint.com.au. See you on the next episode of 6-Star Leaders Podcast.